Welcome to another edition of the Postgame Wrap. I'm Jarret Johnson, and boy, the roller coaster continues with Red Raider football. As Texas Tech, they dropped a big one against TCU, and not only that, but the way they played, it was pathetic. It was very much like the game in Texas in terms of Texas Tech, the defense just being outmanned, out-schemed, really from the get-go. The Red Raiders lost 52-31 to TCU, who quite simply lined up and said, we're going to run the ball right at you, and you can't do anything to stop it. And that's what they did. They ran 47 times for 394 yards. They averaged almost 9 yards a carry, 5 touchdowns. And, you could point to, Zach Evans is a great running back, or at least very talented, and he is. And he had a good game. He ran for 143 yards and 2 touchdowns. But Kendre Miller actually had a better game. He ran 12 times for 185 yards, 3 touchdowns, and averaged 15.4 yards per carry. So it's not like it was just this great talent that is Zach Evans tearing you up, or even a Max Duggan who has really gotten after you in the past, doing it to you again. Though he had his way as well. It was just a total breakdown on defense. And I tell you what, it started off schematically. I remember from the very first play from scrimmage, Mighty Joe Yeager and I were sitting up there in the press box, and I looked at him, we looked at each other and said, oh no, because Tech had that alignment, and everybody focuses on the 3-man front, and that's fine, if you have a problem with that, but my big problem was just the numbers in the box, and the fact that they, especially early, consistently had 3 safeties back. Why not bring one of those guys down to help in run support when this team is obviously trying to line up and run over you? TCU said, we're going to do it until you stop us, and Tech never stopped them, really, not until the game was already, well out of hand. And, the game was well out of hand really early. By halftime, it was certainly over, but I felt like in the first quarter it was over. The offense did okay. It's hard to judge because Tech's offense put up a lot of yards and some points, but it was mostly garbage time. Like I said, when the game was no longer in doubt. But the defense was a problem. A big problem. Like I said, the first question of the postgame presser, I asked head coach Matt Wells. I said, "Look, what does it say about your team that you gave up almost 400 yards and 5 touchdowns rushing, to an in-state rival like that at home, big night game and everything?" And he fenced with me a little bit. He said he didn't see the connection between it being, in-state rival, which to me that seems self-evident that you should be up. Given the stakes and the opportunity of this game, it would be self-evident that why that made it even worse that you allowed that team to come in and do that. But quite honestly, and I try and go back, and this is what I really get to when I'm trying to answer some fundamental football questions when I'm talking to y'all, is I think about those conversations I had with my dad growing up as a kid when we had real conversations about football, sport that we love, whether it be college or pro or even high school, whatever. And I know what we would say about a team that would allow anybody. I restated the question to Coach Wells, okay, how about letting any team run for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns in your house? And the answer for me is also self-evident, that it means you don't have a tough football team. In many ways, it means you have a gutless football team. And that's tough to say. I don't want to say that. But, come on. You allow 400 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns? TCU threw 10 passes. They completed 8 of them. And I say it's 10 passes too many. They should have just ran the ball the entire night because they averaged 8.4 yards per carry. Think about it. They averaged 8.4 yards per carry. And that's even, mixing in there some of those, tackles for loss late in the game when it was garbage time. But, look, Duggan averaged 7.2 yards per carry. Miller averaged 15.4 yards per carry. And Evans averaged 8.4 yards per carry. Come on, that's ridiculous. So you're not going to be a tough football team. You're not going to be a good football team. You're not going to win a lot of games playing defense like that. And then we talked to Tony Bradford, defensive end and defensive tackle for Texas Tech. And I asked him, so what happened? And he said it wasn't the scheme as much as just man for man they got beat. But from up in the press box looking down, the numbers didn't make sense. They light boxes against a team that was obviously lining up and trying to run against you. I know they say, if they went 7 in the box or 8 in the box with 0 coverage, then you're just going to get torched through the passing game. But Well, you were already getting torched with them just running the ball between the tackles. Why not try something different? Why not? I mean, the degree of difficulty on completing those long passes, though they did complete a couple, is still more difficult than just lining up and running over you, which they were doing consistently. So, and then Bradford also said that there were some alignment problems. So, I mean, look, that's bad coaching. So, it's not for me to call for anyone's job or anything like that. But, I mean, if Keith Patterson was replaced, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, you can't allow a team to come in and run for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns on you. Like, you can't. And there were scheme problems. And Coach Willis said when you have a game like this, a performance like this, you can't dismiss anything. Everything's on the table in terms of it possibly being changed. So, and I agree with it. So, hypothetically, if Coach Patterson were no longer to be the defensive coordinator, I'm not saying he's going to be. I'm not saying, hey, this is inside info, this is going to happen. But when you have 2 performances in 3 weeks like the Red Raiders have, again, like Coach Will said, anything is on the table. And I think as well as one of those things could be going a different direction as defensive coordinator. And you have a couple guys on your staff who I think could take over that mantle for the rest of the season, whether it be Kevin Cosgrove, who has been a defensive coordinator at the Power 5 level, both in Nebraska and Wisconsin before, and then Jarret Johnson, who's up there. He's a associate head coach, well respected on the team. So him possibly getting a shot too, I could see. Now, I'm not calling for anyone's job. I'm not saying that Coach Patterson should be fired. I'm just saying when you put up performances against in-state rivals, in-state rivals, 2 out of 3 weeks like that, where it's just Red Raider fans could barely look each other in the eye, and they tell me how embarrassed they are, and understandably so. I think it would be disingenuous for me not to at least acknowledge that as a possibility and who the possible replacements on the staff would be. So we'll see what happens. What they do. I know that if they don't acknowledge that something's wrong and they don't make changes, you have teams like Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Iowa State, Oklahoma, Baylor. All those teams are just going to do the exact same thing that TCU did today. They're going to line up and they're going to just run over you. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. So I didn't think it was an effort problem tonight. Now, there were some plays to be made that the players didn't make. Things snowballed. But I really felt like schematically Tech got off to the wrong foot, and then they had that offensive drive for Sirajic, who had a good game overall, but it was 3rd down. He was wide open. He had an open field, but he just fell down, and they had to punt. It was 3 and out, and then TCU just did the same thing, ran down the field. But, I mean, they ripped off big runs. It was like Tech could not really adjust, and when they did adjust, it was too late. So, I mean, the primary objective of a coach is to put his players in the best possible situation to succeed. And I think they did the opposite of that on defense tonight. So that's disappointing to say, and we'll have to see what happens moving forward. But Texas Tech falls to 4-2 on the season, 1-2 in the Big 12. The good news is they play Kansas next week in Lawrence. The bad news is if you lose that game, I mean, that's a fireable offense. I said that before the season. It has nothing to do with what they've done this year. I mean, you can't lose to Kansas with this much on the line. So Tech should move to 5-2. We'll see what happens. And 2-2 in the Big 12. But it's going to be a long week in Raider Land again after another, as some would categorize it, embarrassing performance on national television. So against an in-state, in-conference rival. So there are so many things that were lined up for Texas Tech to get over the hump, and I think we all could see it. And I wrote 3 stories about it, had a thread about, don't pump the brakes, revel in the moment, all that. And, Tech came out with this kind of performance, and it's really disappointing. I mean, I think that's just the main word coming out of it is everyone's just disappointed. And I hate that for Texas Tech fans, but you know what? There's still a lot of season left to play, so we'll see what happens. We'll be right here to discuss it with you and go over it with you. So with that, I want to thank you for watching, and until next time.